Welcome back to Horrifying Stories. It was a typical summer day at the Liard Hot Springs. Friends and families who are on their way to Alaska start to flock into the park for a brief stopover after being hours on the road. Such was the case for Patti McConnell and her family, and Ray Kitchen's family. What they hoped to be a day of relaxation turned out to be their worst nightmare when suddenly a bear barged in and brought the park to a total chaos. This is their horrifying story. Viewer discretion is advised. August 14, 1997. Liard River Hot Springs Provincial Park, second largest hot spring in Canada. 56-year-old Ray Kitchen, a trucker from Fort Nelson, British Columbia, brought his daughter along with him for work. His daughter Jolene was 11 years old. With them was Jolene's friend Sarah, who also tagged along their trip to Alaska. After Ray's scheduled delivery, the three went for a stopover at Liard River Hot Springs like everyone else. Ray and the two girls were just enjoying themselves. The girls were playing around while Ray kept watch just around the corner, relaxing from a long and exhausting drive. Until suddenly, they heard frantic shouts from above where they were. It was coming from the Hanging Gardens, one of the crowd favorites among the park's attractions. Ray's reflexes brought him hurriedly sprinting up the wooden stairs to the Hanging Gardens view deck area. Much to his surprise, a big bear was already devouring a small boy with blood all over his body. Beside the boy was the unconscious body of a woman also drenched in blood. The boy was Kelly McConnell, only 13 years old, and the woman he was with was 37-year-old Patti McConnell, his mother. Patti's daughter, Christine, who was just 7 years old, was busy playing in the lower pool with her newfound playmates. The little family of three were on their way to Alaska. Patti had decided to move to Alaska and look for a job so she can feed her two kids after having been separated from her husband. Like Ray, Patti decided to stop by the Liard River Hot Springs to have a little bit of relaxation after a long drive. Little did they know, tragedy was lurking around the corner, waiting to devour them. Patti and her kids first went in the lower pool. This pool's spring waters were clear and definitely hot at 127 degrees Fahrenheit. After they had enough, the three went up to the upper pool, which was in the more hidden area of the park. When her daughter Christine ran back down to the lower pool to play with her new friends, Patti and Kelly went after her. As they were going down back to the lower pool, Patti and Kelly noticed an arrow pointing to another attraction in the park, the Hanging Gardens. Kelly got curious and asked his mom if they could have a quick detour to the Hanging Gardens, so they went up the stairs that led to the garden's view deck area. Immediately, their eyes were glued to the variety of flora before them. The view of the greens captivated them, so much that they were even starting to name each of the plants they knew, and did not notice the sound of dry leaves crackling from behind. As soon as Patti realized their supposedly quick detour had taken too much time already, she started to feel anxious about Christine, who was not in her line of sight. Worried, she told Kelly she will go look for her first. However, as she turned around and started going back down, her eyes caught sight of a big black male bear eating a branch just behind the bushes. Patti did not know what to do, and just tried to keep still while trying to whisper carefully to Kelly that a bear was in front of her. Kelly was still busy appreciating the plants and he was not looking at his mom. Thinking she was just joking, trying to make him go down with her to his sister, he shrugged it off and answered rather sarcastically. Once more, Patti called him. Her voice now sounds more desperate. As Kelly turned to look at his mother, with his very eyes, he saw the huge black bear meeting eye to eye with his mother. He quickly told his mom not to move and slowly inched closer to his mother. They heard and saw the bear's loud snort, and in a blink of an eye, the bear jumped over the railings and landed on the boardwalk. Immediately, Kelly shouted and told her mom to run fast. Without a thought, Patti quickly ran back up the stairs to the viewing deck and the bear ran after her. She realized it too late. Going back to the deck was a dead end. In just a couple of seconds, the bear was already on top of her, attacking her without mercy. This horrifying attack all unfolded right before Kelly's eyes. Overwhelmed with anger, despite knowing he did not stand a chance with the bear bigger than him, Kelly charged and kicked the bear's face. He angrily kept hitting the bear while shouting and telling the bear to get off his dear mother. The bear paused and stared at Kelly, but after a while, continued on with his attack. Kelly grabbed the branch and repeatedly struck it against the bear. At the same time, he was shouting frantically for help. The 13-year-old's bravery was something else. He then shifted to the bear's face and struck the branch against its nose. The bear got annoyed and angry. Its hand stretched and reached for Kelly's neck and shoulders. The next thing they know, it was already on top of the teenager, grabbing his waist with his mouth. The bear kept swinging him around before releasing him, sending the boy flying before he landed on the deck, curled up in extreme pain. Not far from him, Kelly saw Patti lying unconscious with her eyes still wide open, but what was alarming was her eyes were no longer blinking. As he slowly crawled nearer to his mother, he found himself caught up in the bear's mouth once again. Kelly shut his eyes as if accepting the fact that his life was about to end in this tragic attack. It was at this point that Ray Kitchen was running up the stairs. His adrenaline brought him to the scene after hearing frantic screams. He immediately grabbed a branch and struck it against the railing, making loud noises and yelled at the bear, hoping to scare it off. However, the bear was unbothered. So Ray got an even bigger branch and began targeting the bear's stomach. It must have been a big blow on the bear as the bear turned towards Ray and barged at him, bringing them both through the railing and into the bushes. Ray was only wearing his swim trunks. He did not have any clothes as initial protection, so he hid behind a tree with his hands over his head as he tried to escape the bear's sharp claws. Ray responded to the screams of Patti and Kelly, but now it was Ray already screaming for help. He screamed loudly with the words, "Help! Bear! Get a gun!" When 71-year-old Frank Hedingham heard this, he quickly got on his feet and ran to the hanging gardens as well. Minutes earlier, he had brushed off Kelly's screams and thought it was just kids playing around and continued on with his rest and relaxation. Also sprinting in front of him was Ingrid Bailey and her friend, Brad Westervelt. Apparently, park goers had already escaped to their cars and there was chaos everywhere in the park. When the two heard about what was going on inside, they did not hesitate responding to the calls for help. Bear encounters were not new to Ingrid. She was a wilderness firefighter and paramedic from Felton, California, so creatures of the wild were something common to her. And so, the three of them can be seen sprinting up the stairs to the hanging gardens while grabbing branches they could use as weapons along the way. Upon arriving at the scene, the first thing that greeted them was Patti and Kelly lying on the view deck, unconscious and covered in blood. But as they turned their heads toward the bushes, they caught the merciless culprit in the act. The bear was biting Ray's upper arm up to its shoulder, at the same time continuing to rip off his already ripped body. The sight before them brought a sense of rage to Ingrid. She started to throw the branches she got, aiming for the bear. She shouted, stomped her feet against the deck, and struck the railing with the stick she got, doing all as loud as she could. After having done all of this, frustration overtook her as the bear remained unbothered once again. Frank and Brad managed to find a big trunk, put it over the railing, and along with Ingrid, they pushed it together as if pushing a battering ram. However, the bear did not move an inch away from Ray Kitchen. Ingrid realized there was no other way than to use a gun, so she thought of looking for the park ranger. Before she could even tell Frank and Brad had already sprinted back down to look for a ranger. Frank was drained but kept pushing the trunk anyway. Then, the bear moved, picking up Ray through his neck using its big mouth. Ray was already swinging up in the air before the bear dropped him on the deck. Ray was no longer breathing and he suffered multiple injuries to his neck, face, and throat. So Ingrid shifted her attention to the McConnells. Although she knew Patti was already dead, being a certified paramedic, she still tried to look for her pulse and prepared to perform CPR on Patti. Around the same time, they heard a groan. It was Kelly. Frank quickly ran over to Kelly, but not far from them was the bear, seemingly extending its arms and trying to reach for Kelly's feet. Without any hesitation, Frank, who was wearing his hiking boots at the time, knocked off the bear with his foot. Fueled by anger, his force was strong and it brought the bear wobbling. However, after regaining balance, the bear continued to walk down the stairs to the boardwalk. This brought people all the more into extreme panic and chaos, running to escape for dear life. Kelly was slowly starting to crawl nearer to Patti as he whispered his request to save his mom. Frank, who had been trained to do first aid, reassured him that they will exert all efforts possible to revive her mom. He got his handkerchief from his pocket and used it to wipe the blood off the boy's injuries. Quite a few men arrived at the scene. One of them brought a towel and knew how to do CPR. One helped Frank with the boy in binding the wounds, while the other helped Ingrid perform CPR on Patti. At this point, the bear had already been out of their sight, and Frank knew they had to get both of them to the hospital quickly. He was about to get some help when they heard people shouting from behind the trees. The bear was still on a rampage. The next victim was 28-year-old Ari van der Velden, who was a research assistant at the University of Calgary. As he was running together with other people from the upper pool, he fell over into the bushes where the bear saw him and attacked him. In just a matter of seconds, the bear was already on top of him trying to rip him off. Ari tried to hit the bear's nose with his foot and pulled its ears, but his efforts ended up in vain. Unbothered, the bear opened its mouth and sunk its teeth into Ari's left thigh. Frank arrived at the parking lot calling for help when he bumped into 49-year-old businessman Dave Webb. Coming from Fairbanks, Alaska, he drove his mobile home and hoped he could relax at the springs, but horror greeted him as Frank recounted what had transpired in the park. Upon knowing that a bear was on a rampage, Dave ran back to his trailer and got his 2 rifles. He then called on another guy at the parking lot asking if he knew how to use a gun. Fortunately, 27-year-old Dwayne Eggbrotten knew how to use the other rifle, so they loaded the guns and sprinted up the boardwalk. First to reach the deck was Dwayne, who saw the bear still eating Ari, who was now lying down on a log, hopeless. Dwayne quickly went into position, fixing his target on the back of the monster's neck and went for it without delay. The bear fell. He launched 2 more shots just in case, despite knowing the bear was already dead. When she heard the shots fired, Ingrid, who was still at the deck with Patti and Kelly, shouted at Dwayne to fire more shots as she felt a sense of rage against the ruthless bear. Finally, the bear was down and it could no longer prey on another victim. The attack had 2 casualties in total, Patti McConnell and Ray Kitchen. Kelly McConnell and Ari van der Velden were able to recover except for some scars that will continue to remind them of that horrifying day at the hot springs. They survived because of brave people like Ray, Ingrid, Frank, Brad, Dave, and Dwayne who have risked their lives to respond to their calls for help. In Ray's case, he literally exchanged his life to save Kelly. To honor his sacrifice, on August 22, 1997, President Bill Clinton sent a letter to his wife and said, "The heroism and selflessness that your husband displayed coming to the aid of Patti and Kelly McConnell is an example of all that is noble and good in human nature." In September 1998, Canada awarded Ray Kitchen, Kelly McConnell, Ingrid Bailey, Frank Hedingham, and Brad Westervelt for their selfless act of courage during that fateful day in August 1997. The day when Liard River Hot Springs turned from a place of relaxation and serenity to a place of horror and tragedy. Thank you for making it this far. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button to get updated on our latest uploads. And if you enjoyed today's episode, click the like button. Again, thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.